Merino has done it again as Spain reach the World Cup semis. Meanwhile, Egyptian hackers have pulled off a generational trolling of Argentina's FA. Barca have officially landed their gay forward line. Ederson's Man U transfer just collapsed. And is Salah heading to MLS? This is DMAC Daily. It's deja vu. Mikel Merino coming off the bench late on, just like he did v Portugal, and scoring the winner once again, this time to send Belgium packing, which means it's also deja vu in the sense that Spain will now meet France in the semi-final stage of consecutive major tournaments. Even more deja vu in the sense that Yamal's immediately started chirping to the press. More on that later on. But for now, we got to talk about today first, because this match was always going to be a bit of a weird one, really, in the sense that, sure, Spain were clear favorites. They were yet to concede a goal all tournament. They're also the reigning European champions with a host of world-class players amongst their ranks. But the reality is that Spain hadn't exactly been incredible this tournament, dominant in every match, but also inconsistent at times, especially in that final third, especially in regards to their star boy Yamal, who'd uncharacteristically been a bit quiet at times at this year's World Cup, unlike his other superstar colleagues who are smashing it. Meanwhile, Belgium had genuinely been so confusing to make sense of, because this current squad is objectively a far cry of its former golden generation on paper. The Unks are on their last legs, and the new gen isn't nearly as talented on an individual level. Their group stage performances were largely uninspiring, and it appeared an embarrassing exit was on the cards, down 2-0 v Senegal with minutes to play, but that match proved to be the catalyst in their dramatic redemption. They somehow managed to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat that day before turning on the style against the hosts, humiliating them 4-1, playing some genuinely brilliant football too. So despite the distinctly flawed squad at Rudy Garcia's disposal, he'd somehow got them ticking, and the team's morale was suddenly booming. So Spain knew they were in for a real challenge here. And early on in this match, it became very clear what it was going to consist of. Spain largely in control of the ball with their immensely technical midfield, looking to carve openings through their clever runs and skillful wingers. Baena's attempt was blocked early on. Spare me the penalty claims already. Yamal then found himself open in that trademark position of his just outside the box. It's usually over in that situation, but as has been the story all tournament, the 18-year-old fluffed his lines. That being said, only a few minutes later, it would be his clever pass that opened up Belgium's defense, finding Porro down the line, who cut it back to Olmo. His attempt was saved by Courtois, but Fabian Ruiz was in the perfect position to bury it. The man who had come into the side at Pedri's expense. Many would have seen that as an almighty selection gamble from De La Fuente, but this is a man who we all know isn't afraid to bench a star player. Just ask Spain's goalkeepers who were sat on the bench. Anyways, that midfield decision would be vindicated in that moment. So 1-0 all over Belgium for most of the first half. Yamal continuing to pepper Courtois' goal, and considering their goal hadn't been breached all tournament, it seemed very unlikely that Belgium were coming back today. But screw logic, because Belgium did exactly that. Castagne whipping in a great ball into the box, and De Ketelaere, just like he did against the US, reacting quickest, outmuscling the centre-back Kubarsi before executing a quality diving header. A proper striker's goal, his third in 2 games. There's a reason Lukaku had been benched all tournament, and you could see from that moment onwards that Spain were a little rattled. That impenetrability was no longer there, and Belgium then came very close to going in front early in the second half. Doku and KDB with a clever 1-2, and Kubarsi's block then set up a golden opportunity for Van Aken, but he struck the side netting. In that moment, Spain knew they were in trouble, so Ruiz and Baena were hooked for Barca's Pedri and Ferran. Then Yamal reasserted his influence with another curler attempt, which was saved, before a clever ball for Oyarzabal, but again, Courtois had it covered. However, that save proved to be detrimental to Belgium, because Courtois would suffer a muscle injury in the process. Now, according to Courtois himself, he wanted to play on in that moment. More on that later on. But as we all know now, Garcia instead opted for his 100% healthy keeper option in Senna Lamens, making his World Cup debut in the process. Talk about a pressure cooker environment. I know he'd been thrown in the deep end at United this season too and smashed it, but environments don't get any bigger than this. And sadly, it would become a day to forget for the number 2. With Belgium sat deep to hold off Spain's attacking threat, it gave Kubasi the space to drive forward and then take a shot at goal. Lamens spilt the attempt, and who else but Mikel Merino, the absolute bagsman that he is, reacting quickest to pounce on Lamens' mistake. A horrible moment for the 20-year-old. The fact that the cameras immediately panned to Courtois was just nasty work too. It is worth remembering that Courtois also had a parried effort go in, but I think the latter goal was the more overt of a goalkeeping error. It must be stated though, how crazy is Merino's clutch factor? This man should have never been a midfielder. We were robbed of a generational striker. His positional awareness and finishing ability is actually elite, and just like Portugal, he'd deliver the breakthrough moment in an instant. Granted, another goalkeeping mistake almost cost Spain late on. Unai Simon caught in no man's land, but the backline recovered as La Roja held on to book their semi-final rematch with France. Again, not a particularly incredible performance, but this Spain team keeps finding a path to victory whilst largely dominating their opponents. Their performances kind of remind me of their 2010 World Cup campaign in many ways, making a poor start to the tournament, but still topping the group and then showing a real maturity in the knockout stages. Obviously, a long way to go before that comparison is truly apt, but this team is clearly very difficult to beat. Rodri is performing at the peak of his powers in midfield. I don't want to hear any slander on this man, okay? His passing range, his ability to dictate the tempo of a game, the guy is a genius, the heart and soul of this team. Defensively, they're very good. Ironically, the only thing holding them back right now is probably in the final third. Yamal's performances are largely being scrutinized, even though he's actually been pretty good. The challenge for him is that all his biggest competitors are literally going beast mode. Like, this is hands down the greatest World Cup in terms of individual superstars stepping up to the plate. So Yamal's lack of goals and assists is a bit surprising to see in that sense, especially because he's the type of player that really tends to relish on the biggest occasion. So the world is still eagerly awaiting a true Yamal World Cup masterclass. It is worth mentioning though that this Spain team is overly cautious at times in their final third approach. It's a very methodical and measured playing style, particularly without Williams in the starting 11. There's no direct speed to really penetrate the back line, so De La Fuente has set this side up instead to largely suffocate his opponents, to gradually break them down both physically and mentally, which is why guys like Merino have come on and made the difference. Now, France is going to be a different beast in the semis. What a matchup that's going to be. They haven't faced a forward line anything like Le Bleu, but they got the better of them last time, which will give them confidence. In fact, Yamal's already talking the talk, quote, "If France should fear anyone, it's us." That's crazy. He's aura gambling again, but I rate it personally. I wonder if Rabiot has anything to say on the matter. Yeah, this match could prove to be the World Cup decider, honestly. As for the losers of today, Belgium, and look, it was a surprisingly impressive tournament in the end. They were incredibly unfortunate to lose Onana, followed by Tielemans in midfield today. He was by far their most influential player all tournament, and losing your midfield spine is just devastating. For me, I think it's the most crucial area of the pitch. I couldn't think of a worse opponent to suffer midfield casualties to than Spain as well, and to then lose their keeper in the most pivotal of moments. That's just tragic stuff. There is an element of drama there too, I guess, because Courtois came out with a professional statement on the matter, but also perhaps a slight dig at Garcia, suggesting he could have continued for a little longer, but just couldn't perform long kicks. The manager responded with his own justification, saying, quote, "From the beginning of the World Cup, I didn't want players on the pitch who were not 100%. That was the case with Thibaut. We didn't want his injury to get worse, and that's why I decided to sub him off." Honestly, I just think it's a cruel twist of fate in the end that Lamens would be the one to make the mistake. A player who has been so reliable otherwise. The beautiful game can unfortunately be so brutal at times. Staying in international news, and honestly, this might be my favorite story of the entire World Cup, because just when you thought Argentina's PR nightmare couldn't possibly become any more ridiculous, their own football federation has reportedly had its email system compromised, and the alleged hackers decided the best possible use of that access was to hilariously make Argentina publicly confessed to corruption. Now, according to the Uruguayan outlet La Calle, journalists across South America received emails appearing to come directly from an official Argentine Football Association media account. The messages didn't try to steal their passwords or install any malicious software. No, instead, it simply declared that, quote, Argentina did not win against Egypt, claiming the reigning world champions had only progressed because of corrupt refereeing decisions. It even congratulated Egypt on their performance and effectively argued they were the moral victors of the tie. La Calle further reported that sources within the AFA believed a group of hackers of Egyptian origin had actually breached part of the federation systems, obtaining internal email credentials, passwords, IP information, and contact lists before using an official media account to distribute the fake statement to journalists. Now, the AFA has not publicly confirmed who was responsible at this stage, but it did acknowledge that one of its accounts may have been accessed without authorization, urging people to ignore any unusual emails while its IT department investigates the breach. Now, obviously, cyber attacks aren't usually something to laugh at, but the sheer level of pettiness behind this alleged stunt is almost impossible not to find funny. Like, Egypt had spent days insisting they'd been robbed after that highly controversial match with Argentina. Head coach Hossam Hassan even suggested FIFA may have wanted Lionel Messi and the defending champions to stay in the tournament. So the idea that Egypt's finest computer specialists used this moment to hack Argentina's federation and make Argentina admit corruption themselves, like, fair play. That is just generational trolling. The timing of this is also brilliant because it only comes days after the FBI opened an investigation into the Argentine Football Association over alleged money laundering. Now, whether that investigation leads anywhere remains to be seen, but from a purely reputational standpoint, Argentina's football authorities are enduring one of the worst weeks imaginable at this point. If another bizarre headline involving the AFA emerges tomorrow, I honestly don't think anyone bats an eyelid at this point. We move now to transfer news, and despite the Alvarez deal stalling, will he join Barca? Will he stay at Atleti? Who knows? But regardless, Barca have officially secured their gay forward line, with Dortmund's Adeyemi joining the Catalan Giants in a 29 million euro deal. I know, admittedly, that is peak childish framing of a story from me, but we all know Barca and Madrid love to use an acronym for a front three, so I couldn't help myself. Also, if you want professional analysis, go watch Sky News, okay? On to a more serious note though, and this is a rather intriguing transfer pursuit. I mean, Rashford, first and foremost, must be absolutely fuming. First, it was Gordon signed at his expense. Now, only for them to sign another winger too. Poor guy. But then again, I can totally understand the rationale behind this transfer. It's very clear that Hansi Flick is prioritizing direct speed with the Barca rebuild in that forward line. He wants players that are pacey, but also capable of doing the dirty work in their counter press to alleviate some of those defensive vulnerabilities. It's also a system that really gets the best out of a specific winger profile. Rafinha was always a top player, but under Flick, he's become world class, with the German boss hoping to replicate Rafinha's success with new recruits Gordon and now Adeyemi. Now, The Athletic are reporting that Barca remain adamant of their desire to sign Julian Alvarez too. I think that's going to be a very difficult transfer to pull off for a litany of reasons. Perhaps they will look elsewhere for another number 9, or as I said yesterday when first covering this story, perhaps their forward line changes in style. Maybe Barca are going down the PSG route of a more fluid, interchangeable front 3 or front 4. We know that Ferran is a versatile option, as is Gordon, and with Adeyemi, he's previously thrived all across the front line. 61 goal involvements in 146 appearances for Dortmund aren't incredible numbers, but having watched Adeyemi for years, I feel like this is a player who is really yet to fulfill his potential, because he can do things that few wingers in Europe can on his day. The speed, the dribbling, and the finishing can be top tier. It's just consistency that has held him back at times. Granted, Dortmund haven't exactly been great in recent years too, with conflicting managerial styles and Adeyemi having to operate in various different roles. So with 1 year remaining on his contract, he's keen on a change in scenery, playing under a manager who awarded him with a Germany debut many years ago. So clearly Flick's a fan of Adeyemi. I do wonder what this means though for Rooney Bardghji. He's behind Yamal in the pecking order, obviously, but with Gordon and Adeyemi joining, it seems like his playing time opportunities will be severely limited. Maybe a loan switch could be on the cards, because the Swede's a seriously talented player. Either way though, I really do like this transfer. I think Adeyemi can definitely reach another level. I don't see him as a guaranteed starter here, but this competitive environment will really test him. Like, if he wants to consistently play, he's gonna have to lock in. But Barca fans, what are your thoughts on Adeyemi's arrival? Do you think the Alvarez deal is still on? I personally have my doubts at this point, but I'd love to know your takes. Elsewhere in transfer news, and another big story has developed overnight with Manchester United's move for Atalanta midfielder Ederson apparently collapsing. Now, this comes over a month after a €45 million transfer was already agreed. David Ornstein's previous reporting was that a medical would be completed in July, and so here we are, and there appears to be a big issue. According to Fabrizio Romano, United have informed Atalanta that they will not be proceeding with the transfer, suggesting he did not pass his medical and that they'll now look elsewhere. Atalanta, however, are strongly pushing back against this notion, insisting the Brazilian is 100% fit and pointing to the fact that he was just playing for Brazil at the World Cup a few days ago. The Serie A club is adamant there are no significant physical concerns, yet are more than happy to welcome Ederson back into the squad with 1 year remaining on his contract. ESPN, meanwhile, are reporting that United have decided to pursue other midfield options. João Gomes of recently relegated Wolves is a name being discussed, as is Manu Kone, the rising French midfielder of Roma. So a bit of a weird situation for United, because rarely do you see all the credible media outlets seemingly confirm a deal is on the cards, only for it to fall apart a month later. It's worth mentioning United did also strike a deal for Andre Santos yesterday, but it's clear they're still looking to bring in at least another one, maybe two names to the club. And to close out today's episode, we move to MLS news now, where one of the biggest transfer stories of the summer could be gathering serious momentum, with reports that Sporting Kansas City have emerged as a possible contender to sign Mohamed Salah. Now, before anyone gets too excited, this is still considered a long shot, right? The Saudi Pro League still remains heavily interested, while Salah himself is understood to prefer staying in Europe. But according to The Athletic, if he does decide to make the move to Major League Soccer, Sporting Kansas City currently sits in pole position. It's worth mentioning Sporting's new majority owner, Peter Malik, is the son of Egyptian immigrants and is leading an ambitious rebuild of the club, pursuing several attacking signings as they look to transform one of MLS's struggling franchises into a genuine contender. Highly respected US journalist Tom Bogut reported that separate negotiations are taking place for Toulouse winger Jan Gaboho alongside Olympiacos winger Andre Luis, but Salah, that would be a new tier of signing. MLS has seen a recent influx of high-profile arrivals post-Messi, the latest being Chicago landing Robert Lewandowski, but the Egyptian king to Kansas City would be quite extraordinary. I personally don't see it happening, but maybe Salah became a big fan of the US after the World Cup. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you same time tomorrow.